Hello, my name is Olympia Sudan, and my pronouns are they, them, and Hershey like the chocolate bar. I am the co-director of Black Trans Media. Black Trans Media serves and exists to shift and reframe the value of Black trans people through community organizing, media, and education.
And I'm Sasha Alexander. I'm the founder and co-director of Black Trans Media. I use the pronouns she and he and they, and insist you mix it up or use my name. And like Olympia said, we're Black, trans, and gender nonconforming folks. We're based in Brooklyn and Bed-Stuy, and we use art and media and organizing to address racism and transphobia and shift power and transform so that our Black trans communities are supported to be able to thrive. I am a Black trans man, non-binary, organizer, artist, facilitator, healer, and I've been doing movement work for the last few decades since I was a young person across movements for racial justice, gender justice, and I'm excited to be here with y'all.
How I came into organizing was really formed and has grown out of the experiences that I've had with different levels, like navigating varying levels of violence, and really coming together with community to come up with strategies on how we were going to combat and eradicate the violence that we were subjected to so often as Black trans people, and particularly Black trans women. So being at Black Trans Media and doing this work at Black Trans Media has been really important to me, and also really grounding as well.
And I think there's a lot of positives of not only activism, but really like finding yourself within movements. And I think for myself, like as a young person, like it really, like I already had an awareness of what I was seeing, but it gave me a sense of history, of memory. It gave me, helped me build an analysis, helped connect me to relationships, to people who were doing this work, to people who were shifting power. I think it's a lot of really hard work, but there's a lot of really like joyful things I find about engaging in activism and engaging in movement work, and some of the like most beautiful deep connections I've had or moments I've had just as a person. Like I remember during a rally after Trayvon Martin was killed, there was a moment that there was like a rally of like mostly Black folks, all sorts of folks, but like we just were blocking the street. And at one point I was in the middle of Times Square, just standing in front of this car with a bunch of other young Black people. We were just blocking this Mercedes-Benz, this woman who just wanted to drive. And we were just like, no, you just have to take a few minutes and you just have to wait. And I think the feeling you have when you're engaging, whether it's like a direct action like that moment, or even just building with somebody, I think there's just like so many benefits to people being more deeply engaged in what's happening in their communities. And it doesn't just benefit your community, it can benefit all like who you are and the people like directly in your life as well. And yeah, I guess, I mean, there's just been like probably just countless things I could say about what I've gained from being in movement. I've been organizing since I was very young. My mom was in the civil rights movement, and she was one of the folks in the room when Malcolm X was shot. She was at the Fannie Lou Hamer trials. She took me as a kid to the Million Kid March on Washington. And so I was always kind of engaged and supported through her in that. She took me to my first rally when I was 12 with my best friend, Mumia Abu Jamal. And that rally was like, a peaceful march from City Hall to this church. And at some point, the cops just rushed in. And I remember the next day in the paper, it said that we were violent protesters and we were, that the cops were keeping us safe. And in that moment, I remember like the cops beating people, dragging this woman by her hair down the street, pulling out these little guns and weapons, doing all these things they do. And the next day in the paper, when it said that, it started to make me realize this thing about storytelling and narratives and media. And I don't know, that started me just getting involved in organizing. And then being young and being queer, I came out as a lesbian when I was like 12 years old. And that just propelled me into political spaces because I was thinking about my identity. And without, knowing how political all that work was or the movements that I was connecting, I just started to get engaged in that work. So I feel really blessed because I was able to access, literally got online one day and found GLSEN, and all of a sudden I was going on a plane for the first time to a training with other students of color who are queer and organizing, and it really just changed my life to be engaged in that way.
I got into organizing because there wasn't spaces where I could bring issues and have some sort of transformative or restorative process around it. I got into organizing because I was reminded that I have something to say, and there are also people that feel the same way that I do or did in those moments, and might not have felt confident in those moments due to the ways that we're persecuted for speaking out or demanding levels of justice. So I think part of my activism and organizing is really calling out those forms of violence, whether they are institutional, interpersonal, and even talking about an internalized process that people often go through or are still in, to unlearn and to take away all of those conditions that have been placed on our bodies. So I think Black people can and are everything. We're all identities and hold different experiences in our bodies and lives. And for me, coming into and having Black trans media bloom and flourish has been a reminder that I have something to share. My experience is rooted in justice, in a justice that is not carceral, a justice that involves both parties. I'm also thinking about how Black trans media, especially when we launched and joined and Sasha has founded it, in a time where people were not exacting on our Black trans experience. I don't think, as I remember, there were spaces talking about people of color facing violence when it was particularly targeted towards the Black body, and feeling like there was a responsibility to name that, a responsibility to make sure that we are working to uplift, connect, employ, empower Black trans people all over, and making sure that we have a critical lens while we're doing any work that we're doing, making sure we're stepping away from capitalist efforts, making sure that we are decolonizing the spaces that we're taking up, making sure that we're creating opportunities for our communities to thrive, whether that is starting another organization, whether that is some development that they need support in, and making sure that we are available to show up and support those needs. So it feels really good, but at the same time, there's still so much work to be done. I feel like the work of Black trans media transcends so many limitations. So I feel, I
would just probably add to what Olympia is saying and just say that part of why we started Black trans media was because, and this was at the beginning before there was even a Black Lives Matter movement that had really blossomed, in the early 2013s, and we had to be explicit. Like, I founded the project because there wasn't something that was Black trans specific in New York City. And there are a lot of Black trans people in New York City and a huge legacy of organizing. But, because of anti-Blackness in the trans community or racism in the trans community, right? There are Black trans people or Black trans leaders, but there's not been space or investment in a Black trans specific space in New York City. And then likewise, because of transphobia in our Black communities, right? There's all this amazing legacy of Black organizing and an amazing legacy of Black, queer, and trans organizing, but not a specific space carved out for us. And part of the legacy of why we started that work which was right in around the summer of 2013 when Islan Nettles was attacked in Harlem, and her death brought about like a whole community gathering with her family and media and politicians and community, and it was clear from the misgendering and the misnaming of just Islan alone there, the lack of space for a Black trans politic, right? That there needed to be something that was ours. And I mean, part of why we, even now in this moment with the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, when we say that, it's like this powerful invocation of all of our Black lives that are mattering. And yet, like, we as Black trans people, like, I've literally had to be in conversation with Black folks and other folks of color about why we have to say or include trans people, and that's divisive. And we were actually like working on a Black Trans Lives Matter mural in the Bronx recently, and like we got so much great reception of that, and like kids and their parents getting out, wanting to take pictures next to where it says like no homophobia, no sexism. And then we also had, you know, the one or two people, you know, oh, why does it say trans in there? Take that out of there, and, you know, mumbling and walking away. And so I think, you know, a lot of our work has been about confronting that and creating a space to directly address racism, creating a space to directly address transphobia, and creating a space where we can be whole in a world that is like constantly like brutalizing Black bodies and trans bodies. So I feel like a lot of the work that we did when we founded the project has also been part of this like beautiful renaissance that you're seeing of Black trans-led projects that here in New York City and across, you know, and I feel like we've been part of, like Black trans media has been part of that momentum from that time, which was like before this trans tipping point, right? Before what a lot of folks are calling this Black trans renaissance that's happened. So I really think Black trans media is situated in this really powerful movement to, as we've seen come back and back again, to Black lives and trans lives and Black trans lives. We've been here and existing and doing Black trans specific work before there were more people who were doing that, and there was only one other organization, Black Trans Advocacy, that had existed and was doing that in Texas and having a convening. And so, yeah, there's definitely been in that flourish of movement. And I think something that happens with movements is when movements become at a mainstream level, right? There can be what people see on the mainstream, and then there's what people might see in the movement. And there's always, I think, a lot of complex relationships. Like when I talked to my mom who was in the civil rights movement, I literally had to ask her this question because there are people in our movement which I don't know if they're infiltrators. I don't know if they're intentionally trying to create conflict. There's just conflict in any work. But I was like, what the celebrityism and this desire to, I think, kind of come up from activism. Like, I do think there was a moment that I used to kind of say, like, you know, as a Black person, people talk about like hoop dreams and that being your only way to get out. And like, I was talking at one point, like as a Black trans person, like everybody wanted to be an activist because it felt like that was the only way to get out. That was the only thing that was going to exist for us outside of any kind of survival economies.
Yeah, things can feel like disingenuous and there is conflict, but there's also a power to be uplifted, or that can be uplifting through all of that tension and that rage that we fix it and gear it towards something specific, ideally in those spaces. But I also think that oftentimes people are not going through and learning, or not even learning their history, more about like being connected to the history that has existed before people have come on. Whether that's like parachute organizers, people have come from other places and dropped in and are like, I'm organizing, I am setting everyone free, I'm going to be the liberator. And those things have happened, and we see that, and we also see what happens after that. You know, there are times where people are like, let's just let this person be. But what that does is it creates more of those moments, right? It creates more of that. I will be the person to set everyone free, rather than I will be the person working in conjunction with people who have been doing it prior, or not even, or just working with people in those communities to address those issues. But
I also just want to say, I think that it's a really dangerous narrative to believe that the only thing we need to get free is money. And this idea that all we need is to put more money towards this, and that's what's going to be it, or to take money out of the police, and that's going to do it. That is not simply, how to dismantle oppression. And you're not going to dismantle white supremacy or patriarchy by being a capitalist and using money, So I also think I think it's incredible that there's money moving, among the uprisings, that there was money moving to Black folks, money moving to Black trans folks. This is also because we're being killed,
yes.
Right? We're being murdered, we're being brutalized, and I think the reality is if we don't come out of this with all of this money flying around and some material changes, some tangible changes, right? I think that, for a lot of folks who see a lot of people turning out to rallies or a lot of money being raised and they're going back to a shelter, they're not able to eat that day. And so they're hitting us up and other mutual aid folks up and trying to get money, right? I think it does create this kind of dynamic where you have a lot of people who are for the first time maybe going out in the streets and being activated. And you also have a lot of directly impacted people who have been hit hard before this pandemic, right? Who we're already navigating all of these issues. And then on top of that, we have this uprising and this kind of disingenuine kind of show for Black lives. And then these viral kind of tweets about Black trans lives or other things. And I do think this actually came up the other day in our social support space, Black Trans Media holds on the weekends. We were talking about what those shows, what that means. And I brought up that there was a tweet that Common had tweeted, Black Lives Matter and Black Trans Lives Matter. And one of the folks on our social support space had to remind me he actually deleted that tweet. And what does it mean that, there was this tweet that was put out, but that then you must have gotten some backlash, clearly, right, as that happens, and you deleted it, right? And so I think when you mainline an issue, meaning when it becomes mainstream, so a lot of us have been fighting for Black lives or queer lives or trans lives, but when it becomes a mainstream issue and it's talked about on the nightly news, it's talked about in public forums, it's talked about by people in power, it's talked about by celebrities, right? I do think the celebrityism is also some smoke and mirrors. We can look at all the incredible Black celebrities, and then we can look at all of the poverty and mass incarceration and harm done to Black families, and we can think, yes, that's celebrityism. It's great to see our folks winning, right, on that level. But that's not even that's capitalism again. That's not the win. The win is people getting free. The win is dismantling these systems so our folks don't have to worry that we're gonna create something like Move and be bombed, right? Or create something like Black Wall Street and have it destroyed, or even have to have a Stonewall riot, right? And have to be in the streets for 3 days or nights and be battling with the police. Why am I marching at the Queer Liberation March for Black Lives and Police Brutality? I am marching and I am showing up because my life and the lives of our folks depend on it. And I encourage people who have to stay home and can't be there to support virtually. And there's lots of other ways to engage and support movements. But I'm personally going to be there because as a Black trans man, as a Black non-binary person organizing, it's important for me to be visible and for me to be part of making decisions, for me to be part of, if we're going to talk about Black liberation, for those of us, right, who are fighting and struggling for that, to be there and be central in that. And also for all the folks who won't be there, who won't hear about it because they're not connected, who won't be able to leave because their shelter is harassing them, who are behind a wall in prison or jail, right? I'm also coming out there for the folks who can't, folks who are disabled, folks who need to stay home, folks who are going to be working that day, that I'm not always able to show up, but I'm able to be there and I'm able to take leadership because that's also what my spirit calls me to do. So I feel like I'm marching and I'm out there and I'm here on Sunday because that's what my spirit and my heart and my mind tell me I need to do, right now to show up. And the legacy of Stonewall and the legacy of Black trans folks, that there's nothing about us without us, So I'm going to be out there for sure, marching for all of our folks, but definitely for Black trans folks and Black trans and queer liberation.
And I will be marching at the Queer March for Black Lives Against Police Brutality because as Black people, all people, we are intersectional. So we are Black, queer, and trans people that will be there. And I think it's important for me to participate and contribute to actions, rallies, because it's a part of my ritual to the land and with my ancestors. It's a way that I honor all of the work that they did for me to be here, for me to know that there was histories of resistance. I march because I want to uplift, like Sasha was saying, the people that can't be there or don't feel like they want to expel that level of energy. I'm marching for the years, for the time, for the centuries of oppression and silencing our Black trans narratives, our Black trans experiences, because anti-Blackness has created a climate where there is a specific way that you should be Black. There's a specific way that you add value to your life. And we are calling that as violence. And that is not the future or part of the future that I want to see, where all people are living in our practicing equity. I definitely am marching to create tomorrow. I'm marching for the possibility of the beyond. I'm marching because I know that there is so much power in being present and so much power when we're together.
And I also just want to share, I feel like we're marching, like when we think about the folks who can't march, and we think about literally like some of where these uprisings and the necessity moving forward is, it's the folks who aren't able to march. So I think about Tony McDade, the Black trans man who was killed in Tallahassee by the police, who won't get to march, and I'm marching for Tony. I think about Dominique. I think about Nina Pop. I think about Layleen Polanco. I think about
Duana Johnson,
George Floyd, and I think about all of the different Black folks beyond just Black trans folks, Sakia Gunn, Mark Carson, all of the Black folks in New York City, Sean Bell, Kamani Gray. And I just think part of why we're marching is also about connecting all of these movements and all of these, I guess, like this collective grief, that you turn grief into action, and it's kind of like planting a tree and watching something grow. So I feel like, like Olympia said, I'm marching for our futures, for the possibilities.
Also, I just wanted to say, part of us marching as well, part of the reason why I'm marching in terms of my relationship or ritual with the ancestors into this land is also I see it and I feel like every time I'm marching and stomping on the ground, I'm breaking that facade that was built over this land that our people were on and that our people were forced to build something on top of so other people can live and imagine and dream. So I'm building and shaking and vibrating the floor to take away all of the veils that so many of us have been conditioned and subjected to wear and look through. Black queer liberation, think about it, but for me it's more about, I was talking about this, it's about equity. Black queer liberation to me looks like, imagining in working outside of these carceral systems, right? For me, it looks like we are taking into consideration not equality, but equity, right? What are the things that people specifically need to sustain, to thrive in this world? I think about a place where we are having dreams and visions outside of violence. I think of a place where there is land for us to grow whatever it is that we're planting, a place where we're able to have conversations, love up on each other in consensual ways, and uplift these ideas, these different journeys that we imagine for ourselves. I I think of a place where there is support for everyone, and that there isn't just a body that is the example, or a person that is the example, but everyone is taken into consideration. That was my first thought.
I mean, I guess I would say I feel like Black queer liberation looks like our folks being free in all the many ways that you need to be free in a carceral state, in a carceral world, in an anti-Black world, in a transphobic world, in a homophobic world, in a xenophobic world, right? All of these systems and these conditions that lead to our oppression. I mean, I imagine in an ultimate Black queer liberation, that our folks would be free of that violence, that our folks would be free of that harm. And at the same time, I imagine that part of the arc of that liberation is about us claiming that and living in a world where we have to contend with the fact that not everybody is there, but that we're there. And that by us being there, we can feel free and we can be connected, that we can have what we need to thrive, that we have the housing we need, the healthcare we need, the food we need, that we've found ways to personally hold ourselves accountable beyond these punitive forms, that we're telling the stories that are from our ancient ones that are going to get us to our future. Like, I just imagine Black queer liberation to me is just about life, about breath, about movement, about a continuation, about not just something in the now, something that has to go on forever.
And it also means to me, queer liberation means to me a divestment from all of the systems that have historically harmed us. And I also think about it as a place where there is continual strategies happening for the ways that we are going to live life, the ways that we want to live life.
Yeah, and I would just, I guess, finally just say that, like, Black queer liberation is when every Black person is liberated, whether that's disabled Black folks living with HIV, Black folks who are queer, Black folks who are trans, Black folks who are poor, Black folks who are immigrants. Black queer liberation looks like us all getting what we need and all getting safe and free from these systems that have been built up and maintained to harm our communities. And I guess the last thing I'll just say is that Black queer liberation to me is not just like something that we'll be able to see. You know, it's something that we're going to feel, we're going to hear. I think it's on so many levels like a joy that we can have. And so, and sometimes I think we've gotten like moments of that, you know, like when we're in the streets and we're marching together, even though we live in this really hard world, I feel like we have these little glimpses and these little tastes of what that world can live and look like. And yet we're still in this world where, like, the cops are going to come out, people are going to get locked up, people can get, like, torn apart from people they love, people can get harmed, people can die, and people can be killed. And I just imagine that a Black queer liberation, I mean, it doesn't mean we won't all go, but it means we're not all going to go because someone hates us. We're not going to go because the cops are going to gun us down. We're not going to go because someone was homophobic or transphobic and thought it was okay to take our lives. You know, we're going to go because we lived on this earth and lived our lives, you know?
I know we keep having last things, but I'm also thinking about, like, speaking to queer liberation means that person who is Black and queer knows that there is a space for them, that there is a space in a community for them. Black queer liberation to me means that people know that they are valuable, that they have every right to take up space in this world, that they know that they are loved, and that people love them outside of the confines or the environment that does not allow that to be in their everyday experiences. Just a reminder that queer liberation is you. Black queer liberation is our peoples that are not connected or can't be connected, you're all a part of this momentum in this moment.
If you want to learn more about Black Trans Media, you can find us online. You can use our hashtags Black Trans Everything, Black Trans Love as well, Black Trans Future, Space is the Place. We're all over social media, and we also just opened, a few months ago, we opened a political home in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, where Olympia grew up, and we'll be opening that space as well soon. You can always email us at Black Trans Media, and we do different workshops, political education, media making, organizing, and also hold online social support space and digital organizing and other space. So you can find us virtually, or you can also find us in the flesh, probably somewhere in Brooklyn or otherwise doing something for Black trans folks. A message to the folks who are watching this from Black Trans Media and Reclaim Pride Coalition, just thanking folks for taking part in this way. Even if you're not physically out on the streets, your energy is felt, your support is appreciated, and showing up by watching and sharing and posting and engaging folks and holding digital space is just as important as what we're doing out here in the streets.
Thank you so much for building power with our communities.
There's lots of other ways you can get involved in what's going on, even if you can't be out here right now with us. There's folks who you can be calling, tweeting. There's mutual aid support. There's folks who are remotely supporting, and there's all sorts of ways to engage. So please, even if you're not out here today, these movements are going to keep going on. All of our organizations like Black Trans Media and all the other folks who are out here have campaigns. These are not like day-long or week-long or month-long struggles. Like, these are things that are going to need folks to continue in our movements working on. So I would just say, if you're out there and you want to be engaged in a different way, just know there's so much in our movements. There's so many different spaces and places. And just by watching and just by being here with us, you are part of this historic march.
Support, support, support.
And just, again, lots of love from us over at Black Trans Media, from Black, trans, and gender nonconforming folks here in New York City, from artists, from organizers, healers, truth tellers, our folks in shelter, our folks in NYCHA, our folks all across. We just send love to y'all and to all our folks who can't be with us today.